Welcome to Wildlife Outdoors with your host, Russell and Jose. If you have a passion for conservation of the outdoors, or you're enjoying a calming hike in the mountains, an exhilarating kayak trip on the river, feeling a fish on the end of your line, cooking on an open flame in a primitive campsite, or stalking big game, just waiting for the perfect shot, you're in the right place. So put on your boots and polarized sunglasses and come along for the ride.
Well, welcome back to the podcast. Today we have a guest. It is Brian. We're going to go ahead and call him Brian O'Hassler. And he's going to join us, and we're going to talk a little bit about bow fishing this episode. So, Brian, go ahead and introduce yourself.
Hey, everybody. My name is Brian, or you just call me O'Hassler. I like to think I'm decent at fly fishing, but I kind of suck. But my motto is I suck at fly fishing, but you just never know. So that's why I keep going out there day and day again, sometimes getting skunked, and sometimes looking at that conventional gear, but generally saying, not today.
Unless you're not catching something, then you flip.
Nope, I don't even bring it anymore. Because there was like, it was on huge fly fisherman. He was doing the regional stereotypes. He's like, Florida guys, why do you have the conventional gear in your boat? What, are you afraid of getting skunked? And I thought, all right, game on, let's go. So I just leave it at home.
Well,
and besides,
good,
and I'll just say this for your audience, like catching redfish on spoons, not really that fun. Fishing with paddle tails, not really fun. Bottom humping with shrimp, Texas, or not the Texas, but the like Cajun Thunder, meh. But topwater, that's okay. But other than that, it's fly all the time.
I love it. I dig it.
All right,
man,
I'm ready.
Here in Texas are going to go to fisticuffs, man.
All righty. We're going to get some hate on this episode right off the bat.
Oh, I dig it. I like it.
So, all right. So, I guess we'll start getting into some of the bow fishing stuff. Have either of y'all ever been bow fishing?
No, and you won't see me doing it.
What about you, Joe?
All right, so I'm going to catch a little bit of heat. I personally would go bow fishing under the right circumstances, though, and we can get into that a little bit later. But I was going to go out and say I am not opposed to the idea. How about you?
And I have actually been bow fishing. Haven't gotten anything, and it was kind of strange. It was actually, Jose, where you caught that koi at. Went bow fishing right out there, and
oh yeah,
I mean, I don't know. I just don't think it's my thing. I would just prefer to land a fish on a rod. It's more fun to me. Nothing really against bow fishing in the right circumstances. I think bow fishing and eradicating native and indigenous species to areas is something that I am definitely against, but in certain circumstances, invasive species and whatnot, I might think it might be a little fun. But yeah, I've been, and I've just haven't been successful at it. So it's kind of my stance on it. Like, I'm not opposed to doing it if it's responsibly done. So
yeah. So Brian, you seem to be pretty adamant about or against it. Is there what are your issues with bow hunting, or sorry, bow fishing?
I think I'll look at it this way, and I'll take it like an academic approach. I'll start with the positives and I'll get into negatives. How about that? Just in case anyone gets their undies in a little bind after hearing this. But I would say bow fishing requires some skill, right? Like bow hunting, it's a lot harder than having I think a high powered rifle and, shooting a deer at 60 yards or whatever it is. So I will say that there's some skill involved. And it's not as easy. I assume it's kind of like shooting a pistol. You're like, oh, I can hit a target 10 yards away, but you try it and you're like, oh, yeah, I'm not that great of a shot after all. It's not that easy. So I think there's some skill involved with it, and that's totally okay. I just think for me, there's categories of bow fishing, right? There's your just, I don't know what's the term, but kind of just like prick bow hunter that just kills things to kill things, right? Just go out there. I'm going to shoot carp. I'm going to shoot buffalo. I'm going to shoot gar, and then I'm going to throw them on the shore. See, I'm not okay with that. Um, Now, if you're shooting things and you're eating them, like that's okay. Like that's I still don't necessarily love it, but like there's a primal part in me that thinks it's not that bad to like shoot a carp with a bow. I don't really like it, but if you're going to eat it, then that's okay. Or you're going to feed it to your dog or whatever it is. That's okay. So that's kind of like my second category of how I kind of think of like um, bow fishing instinctively. And then there's the third one that's kind of like the invasives, like guys that go up whatever the various river systems and try and shoot the silver carp, the big head carp, all those kind of things, or people down South Florida that are shooting tilapia, um, snakehead, Mayans, all those kind of fish. And I'm not necessarily opposed to that per se. It's you could say it's animal control, but I don't know. I think there might be more effective ways if we really want to get like a invasive species out of the area rather than shooting like one or so with a bow and missing like I don't know 10 and then wounding a bunch of them. So I guess that's kind of like how I think about it is the people that just go out there just to and as you know, Russell, you might have seen this as you go down to some of those creeks, and I'm not going to hotspot it, but in
Yeah.
that hot springs area, and there's like
Hmm.
dead red horse.
Red horse. Yep.
Yeah, and it's just and I think it would be great to point out kind of like the fallacy of that is that sure carp may not be super attractive to some people. They're not this like prized animal like they are in parts of Europe or Asia, right? Where people just think, oh, that's a trash fish, but these fish actually do some kind of form of cleaning the water, and that's kind of why it bothers me. Like no one's out there shooting largemouth, right?
Right.
No one's going to go shoot a. Well, I take that back. If some people saw a 7 pound bass in clear water, they probably would take a shot at it, but it's just not a general thing. Um, so I guess that's how like I frame like when I think of bow fishing. But then I'll say there's the fourth category, and the one that I just it's beyond the pale for me is the Louisiana where you can take a boat out of guys, four dudes, and it's crazy to me being a Floridian, right? And you can make the jokes about me being Florida man, and I'm probably hot blooded and this, that, and the other. But at least in Florida, we realize that redfish are kind of they're limited in numbers, and you can only have one of them. And
Yeah.
and a lot of us didn't even want you to catch redfish and keep them, I should say. So it's weird coming from that and then going to Louisiana where it's like, oh, you can keep whatever it is, 4 or 5 reds a day,
Hmm.
and you can keep trout over 12 inches, which is just mind-boggling. But then you get the outfitters, right? That'll bring a bunch of dudes on the boat and they'll shoot reds, right? And if you think about it, are they measuring those reds to make sure they're however many inches? I doubt it. So I think
And
it's kind of
even if
like
they did, they shot him through with an arrow, and it's most likely not going to survive anyways. Yeah.
so there's no catch and release in hunting.
Right.
If you shoot something that's too small, it's like, well, it's dead. But so that's kind of how like I think about it. And then God forbid anyone shoot a tarpon, right? Like that's too much. Too
Right.
much for me. And so that's how I would frame it. It's not just like this blanket opposition to anything, but just kind of more along the grounds of like it's sporting, I guess. But if we're really about conservation, is there other ways to do it? But I'm not. Again, like someone wants to go out and shoot some tilapia. I mean, cool.
Yeah.
But even
No, I
then,
mean,
and this gets back to a conservation issue. Is I remember when snakeheads were first kind of spotted in the wild. There's a lot of like, oh my God, they can walk on land. They're going to bite children. They're going to eat all the natives. There's not going to be any bass or any sunfish left in the state when these monstrous, voracious, murderous animals, get into the waterways. But I mean, it's like with Oscars, they're just now native fish, and I think it's going to be. It's kind of like with invasive weeds. Sure, we can like take a Roundup and just poison everything. And you might kill them in like a select area, but like I think it's just something that they're in the system. We'll just have to learn to live with them. But eventually they will be native fish, and like somehow or another, even these invasives will come under uh, threat at some point or another.
Yeah. And what about your thoughts, Jose?
So, I mean, Brian, you make some great points, and actually, I feel very similar in some of those ways. So, kind of like you. Okay, well, let me back up a little bit. So, I don't have an issue with the idea of bow fishing in and of itself. Like, I don't think I have a place to judge someone for how they choose to recreate. I mean, they're spending money. That money goes into conservation, buying licenses, all that stuff. Assuming they're doing it the correct way. They're abiding by the rules and regulations set in place by their local natural resources agency. Have all the proper licenses and permits that they may need wherever they are in the country or whatever is required of them. As long as they're following all the rules, regulations, whatever, and they're doing it legally. Like, hey, whatever. It's not my place to judge you for that. My issue comes from more of like an ethic and moral, I guess, opposition. So going back to what Brian was saying, like I agree with a lot of his points. For me personally, I don't have an issue with the idea of bow fishing in and of itself. Like, I think that if someone is abiding by the rules and regulations set in place by their respective like natural resource agency. They have all of the necessary like licensing equipment, all that stuff. I don't think I have a place to judge someone for how they choose to recreate. Um, that being said, I think my biggest issue with bow fishing is more coming from more of a like an ethical and moral standpoint. So going back to what Brian said, like, I mean, I fished in areas where I saw fish on the bank, and I know they were both fish because I can see the holes from where the arrow pierced them. And man, I just have an issue with people doing that. Like, I think as outdoorsmen, we owe the fish and the wildlife, you know, nature deserves our respect, right? And I just don't think it's fair. Or I don't think it's cool that we can just discard them like that. I understand that maybe you don't want to eat them, but I mean, I have heard of people like composting fish and stuff like that using as fertilizer. I don't even have an issue with that because at least you're using it to some degree. And I guess there is something to be said that if you do toss a fish on the bank, like nature will come along, vultures, raccoons, something, but still, man, I just don't like that idea. It just doesn't sit right with me.
It's one thing to
Always,
do like one or
yeah,
two.
exactly.
20? Yeah.
Yes. And so that's the other thing. Like, at least here in Texas, you can bow fish non-game species. And most of the species don't have size limits or bag limits, with the exception of some saltwater species like black drum and sheepshead, but those do have size and bag limits. But I mean, they taste good, so I imagine people will probably eat them. But yeah, so it's terrible, man. Like, you can go out and you can just load. I mean, like, just shoot a ton of fish, and it's totally unregulated, And I mean, they can dump them, they can do whatever, and it can in like smaller water bodies, it can do a lot of damage, and that affects other outdoorsmen who choose to go after those fish because now the population is not what it was, and it's just making things difficult. And I don't think that's okay. And a lot of that is just like misinformation, mismanagement. Um, and so the other issue I have is like I feel like bow fishing.
And I'm not saying all bow fishermen are like this, but I feel like it kind of perpetuates this trash fish ideology, right? Like if a fish doesn't serve a purpose, like it's not a game fish, like a bass or whatever, then it's no good. They're like, what are they here for? We're gonna just go and do whatever, no one cares type of thing. And I think it's a disservice, one, to the ecosystem, because a lot of these fish are native, like smallmouth buffalo, red horse suckers and stuff, to these systems. And yet they're like being indiscriminately targeted and just like annihilated. Well, annihilate is a strong word, but just like totally hammered. And and this is because like people don't take the time to try and understand, I guess, what it is that they're pursuing. Like a lot of these guys lump carp all into one group. A common carp is just as bad as a grass carp, just as bad as like an Asian carp, so on and so forth. And then if they don't really know what they're talking about, or if they don't really know what they're targeting, like it's very easy to confuse like a smallmouth buffalo with a carp, and they'll get hammered too. But they're native, and not all carp are the same. Like common carp, for example, at least here in Texas, they've essentially become naturalized. They're not a native, but common carp, and without getting too much into like semantics, but naturalized essentially means like an organism is able to grow, spread, and reproduce on its own. And these fish have done that. And so at this point, they're like a naturalized species. Oh, also, the other caveat is without causing like any harmful effects, right? In that instance, then it would become like an invasive, right? And people like to throw these terms around like interchangeably, like exotics are invasive, but that's not true. It's possible for an organism to be an exotic or non-native and not be invasive. Like a lot of our vegetables, like tomatoes, they're not native to here. They're not a North American species, but they're a staple in our cuisine, and we grow them, and people grow them in the gardens, but they're not invasive. They're not negatively impacting the environment or causing economic harm or harming humans. And that's essentially what an invasive is. It's an organism that causes economic or environmental harm, or can pose health or can pose harm to humans. And so common carp, that I guess there's a caveat, because I guess the term invasive is kind of fluid, because organisms can be invasive and cannot be invasive, right? Common carp under the right densities, I would imagine, aren't going to be invasive. It's when their populations are high enough abundance or density that they will then begin to negatively impact their environment. But at what point is that going to actually happen? And such and so forth. And I think with grass carp, at least here in Texas, if you want to stock them or something, they have to be like sterile, so they can't reproduce, and you have to get permits and all this stuff. And so a lot of people just don't, I guess, understand these things and just lump everything, like all carp are bad. A buffalo they think is a carp and it's bad. They think gar are bad or whatever, and that's not the case. So that's the one thing, like I guess, that perpetuating this trash fish ideology, and just like not taking the time, or like in like the indiscriminate shooting of all these species. Like it's not. I don't think that's great either for the environment or for the systems.
I think one thing I'm kind of curious about, and if anyone else wants to chime in, is sometimes you'll hear like a bass fisherman, like conventional bass fishermen, they'll talk about, oh, I went to such and such spot, man. It used to be a lunker hideout, so on and so forth. Now there's just so many gar in there, and I'm kind of wondering if like that kind of word of mouth, you know. Road Cove or whatever cove you want to name, or whatever spot used to be bass, but man, there's so many gar in there. If that kind of just filters out and people go, oh well, let's kill them off so the bass will come back. So I'm just kind of
I can
curious.
almost definitely say that that's a lot of what happens.
Yeah,
I
okay.
mean, there are certain creeks that you alluded to earlier here in Hot Springs area where, I used to target red horse suckers, and Now there's been numerous times I've seen flat bottom boats going by with spotlights, and then the next thing you know, you're out there and you see 400 red horse suckers with holes pierced through them just laying on the bank or in the middle of the creek. It's one of those things, especially when they're spawning. You'll see them by the thousands when they're spawning, and so there might be a conventional guy out there bass fishing saying, "Oh, there's all these red horse suckers everywhere." So I can definitely see how that ideology could definitely spread out and go from whatever fishermen targeting a specific species to bow fishing and saying, hey, this is that trash fish ideology, as Jose said. Same thing with pickerel. There's been numerous times I've gone and done pickerel tournaments or just going for recreational fishing for pickerel. And I had a guy pull up in a bass boat next to me. He's like, "What are you catching?" I was like, "Pickerel." And he said, "Oh, well, why ain't you throwing them on the bank?" "What do you mean? Why would I throw them on the bank?" "They're trash fish. They're indigenous. They're native species. Why would I eradicate a species if I'm not going to harvest it? Just throw it on the bank just because you think it's a trash fish because it has sharp teeth or whatever the case may be."
Because it bites your conventional $8 Rapala and puts holes in it.
Yep. Exactly. So I think that probably is a lot of it.
Yep. Yeah, and it just goes back to like the spread of misinformation or lack of education. Like, I'm going to get probably some heat for this because especially here in Texas, so many people are like against regulation or more regulation. But I think in the case of bow fishing, I don't think more regulation is necessarily bad. Like put bag limits or something, size limits, that's going to be kind of hard because with refraction and things, it is hard to judge.
Yeah.
But I mean, at least put some bag limits or something. And then, I mean, you have to take a hunter's education class to hunt, bow, whether it's bow, rifle, whatever. Maybe they can even do something for that if you want to do some bow fishing, like fish ID, whatever. I learned to identify what is native versus what is invasive or whatever, or non-native. Like I think there are better ways to go about it, and again, like I mentioned at the beginning of the podcast, I myself would love to go bow fishing, but I would want to do it for like invasive carp, and I think that's the only way that I would do it. Yeah. Again, I don't think it should be outlawed outright because again, if someone it's not up to me to judge someone for how they choose to recreate, but I think there are better ways to kind of handle this. How we do these.
I agree with that, but so do they not have to take a hunter's education course to bowfish? I'm unfamiliar with that.
I don't think so. I think under Parks and Wildlife, if you look in the rules and definitions for Parks and Wildlife, I think they define bow fishing as a form of fishing.
Really?
Even though it's not rod and reel. So I'm not sure. And again, like do your own due diligence, do your own research, do your due diligence and check this out before you go and start shooting stuff. But to my knowledge, I don't think you have to take hunter's ed to bow.
Really? That's interesting. That's something that I wasn't aware of.
One thing I appreciate Jose is the thinking man, and he's going to add some nuance to this. So I like that. One thing I want to bring up is maybe this thought that just because like the local regulations say that you can bow hunt, does it actually mean if you come back with science and say that, look, this bow fishing, right? It's decimating the species that clean the river, or it's decimating species like that are game fish that people are coming here for, and it's such a problem. It's like I guess what I'm getting at is like, when does the science come back to influence, more at that policy level, and is that even something that anyone wants to listen to? Because if they're thinking about science or they're looking as a revenue stream as well, if we say people can't bow hunt or bow fish, then they're not going to get licenses, and then we're going to lose out and thousands of dollars. To which I would counter, is it really that much of revenue for like the state, or are there better ways of getting revenue? But that's a different question. But I guess like my only point is that like, if people aren't doing it sustainably, and just because it's legal doesn't necessarily mean that it's great for the fisheries. And of course, I'm coming to this from like from a Floridian, where like I imagine if we saw some dude in the creeks like shooting reds with bows, like it, it wouldn't go over well. And God forbid some clown goes down to like the Keys or like Miami and is rolling around in the mangroves trying to shoot, not only bonefish but snook and Goliath grouper. It's illegal, but that hadn't stopped anyone from doing anything stupid. But it's just like it's kind of foreign to me. I mean, people that shoot or that are bow fishing are usually doing it for like um, gar mostly that I see around here. But there are some people that will shoot like I guess grass carp, which I don't know if those are technically invasive. But Florida's like one of the only states where they're not really like common carp. If I want to go fish for common carp, I have to go up to kind of the Atlanta metro area or the Chattahoochee River, which is a good like 3 hour hike. Or I go 6 hours down and go look for some beast grass carp. But that's just kind of like my how I frame it is again just because it's legal doesn't necessarily mean if there's no really like limits to what you can kill. Um, and again, and I guess
Yep.
this is another point is that it's like with bass fishing. Bass guys release bass, right? Very few of them actually keep anything. And this is anecdotal. I am not a scientist. I may have a PhD, but I'm not a scientist. I'm not a marine biologist, so take my word as a grain of salt. But I've seen enough anecdotal evidence from local biologists that say, hey, you should keep a few bass. Like releasing them in some ways kind of stunts their growth. And I would kind of take that correlation to like maybe it's not a bad thing to remove a few gar here and there, to trim down the population because maybe it is excessive and that could be construed as some form of like management of a fishery, right? But I think that's a far cry, but beyond that, and hey, I'm going to go shoot the bow of my bow hunting, my bow fishing boat full with gar, stack them on top of each other in 3 layers, like that's of course kind of gratuitous, but like if you're going to do something with them, hey, if you're going to make some fish oil and you're getting into Vietnamese cooking and you're like, you know what, I'm going to go outside and I'm going to have some rotting fish, but I'm going to learn to do it. I'm going to have enough fish oil to cook for a few months. Like, cool, whatever. Or you want to feed your dog, you know, gar. That's like I don't necessarily have a problem with that. And again, it's skill, right? It's not just like anyone can go out there and chuck a bobber with like a worm and catch something. You got to like sit there and aim, right? And it's difficult. So I do respect that. There's a skill, but it's like just the sort of the wanton, just I'm going to throw it on the bank without any regard for it. And I don't. And I'd like to think that education would help, but coming from a former educator, I couldn't even get students to read the syllabus. So so
Yeah,
I'm wondering, like,
I
read the
mean, dude, like,
regulations. It's like I don't need to read the regulations. I can tell there's enough gar in this lake to 5 times over. We don't need it. Yeah.
see, yeah, man. I mean, I think that's a big issue. Like, you can have all the data, you can have all the information, but at the end of the day, it's whether you can articulate it to the public in such a way that it's like digestible, but two, whether or not they're willing to be accepting of it. And I mean, and it's been proven time and time again that you are going to have those detractors of science and what the numbers say and whatever. And so there's a lot of issues with that. I feel like a natural resource, um, at least like in the management and things like that, policy is largely influenced by public perception, right? And that is where it gets really, really difficult because you have to balance like the needs of the wildlife, the needs of these species with the wants of the people. And at the end of the day, it's the people's money who helps to, fund conservation and things like that. And they will have a say. And ultimately they will have a say in how things should be done or not. And I mean, we've heard like in other states, like certain hunting for certain species are banned and whatever. And it's just it's really difficult because like the human component of it just makes things
It
so
does.
difficult.
Yeah.
And it's just hard. Kind of like what you said, like, yeah, I mean, like they feel that they own the wildlife, they own the fish, and they should be able to do whatever they want, especially if like they have private property and but that's not the case. Like these are resources available to the public. People from Oregon can go fish and catch fish in Florida if they want to, so long as they have the right licenses and stuff like that. But these resources belong to everyone, and so it's really just hard to, I guess, manage for these types of things, and it just makes it so difficult
Yeah, and
sometimes.
it's yeah.
So yeah, I mean, you could.
No,
Sorry,
I
go ahead.
think it's kind of hard sometimes for Americans. We think of ourselves as like so individualistic, and like social media has heightened that in a way that we're very, are individual. So I think sometimes it might be hard to think like of a kind of common public good, and to think of like, what you're using as a natural resource as the public good. And like,
Yeah,
I'm just going to go out on a limb here, and that's fine. I don't care. But it's like, I think fly fishermen, it kind of intuitively, as part of being a fly fisherman, think a little bit more about that in a different way. And I'm not saying, and this kind of ties in with something else that I've heard. Um, and being in Florida, kind of one of these kind of hot button issues is red snapper season, right? It's like, you hear anecdotally, God, I can't catch a grouper now because there's so many red snapper. Let's just open red snapper up all season long, or let's lengthen it, so on and so forth. And like the scientists aren't doing their job. I've heard like that kind of thing, not necessarily like a conspiracy, but the scientists, the biologists don't know what they're doing. They're just trying to hurt the recreational anglers that are the ones that help fund, conservation. So I guess what I'm getting at is like, sometimes there's these like innate things within us that just, and it's heightened now. Like we don't want to distrust, we don't want to listen to what the scientists say for whatever reason. Biologists that, they're just being way too cautious, right? They're way too cautious,
yeah,
There's so many snapper down there. I could catch 50 of them. But, the thing is, I'm, I'm not a bottom humper. I'm not a conventional guy that fishes for red snapper. But I've heard marine biologists tell me that even though you kind of like pop their bladder, a lot of them still are going to die from being hauled up 30 feet, you know. And so that leads to kind of the question of like, do you just have like and I know this isn't like bow fishing, but it's like maybe the first few fish you catch, you got to keep them. It's just that's how it is, and then you
yeah,
just stop. It's kind of like with a I went fly fishing with this Canadian in the Panama Canal, and he was telling me about like, the English. And if we have any English listeners, you guys are so class ridden, it's cute. But like how they will they've got all these rules. Like you can only fish like in these creek or chalk creeks, like on Tuesdays and Thursdays between certain hours. And then no matter what, you got to cull like whatever fish it is. The first fish you catch, the third fish, you got to cull them, right? And I guess like
hmm,
my it's getting back to kind of like this perception about how we think of fish, like how we think of ourselves as fishermen, what our kind of role is in it, and are we like the Rambos out there, the mercenaries that we feel like we're doing the job of like, policing natural resources and getting all those damn gar out of there.
yeah. Dude, you might. I mean, yeah, I think that's a valid point. Like, I can't even tell you how many times I've hopped onto like Facebook and those fishing groups, whatever. And they're like, "Oh man, we've been catching so many reds. I don't understand why the limit's so low. Like, we should be
Mm-hmm.
able to keep more and whatever." Or like, when they started lowering the bag limits for trout, like, "Oh, trout are doing great. I can go catch my limit in like 15 minutes. I don't know why we need to lower them." But at the same time, it's like, dude. You're questioning the decisions that people have spent their entire careers like going and investing in doing this stuff. Like it's not just arbitrary numbers they're throwing out there. All
They're
this
not
stuff is just like
haters.
they've done
Yeah.
their due diligence. Yeah, they've done their research. They've literally dedicated their careers to figuring this stuff out. And I mean, because you got to think if, yeah, man, I don't know, man. It's kind of funny, but also kind of frustrating. And I'm not going to sit here and say like, my crap don't stink, whatever. Like I, I do think that, I would like to think that I've grown a lot. Like in my younger years, man, I was all about like limiting out. I was all about going out there and just fishing and whatever, and that was like a goal. Like every time I went fishing with my buddies, like we're gonna get our limits of reds
Hmm.
or trout or whatever, and we're gonna go and and that was like a point of pride, I
Putting the
guess you could
smackdown
say.
on them. Oh
And
yeah. Yeah.
yeah, man. That's and but the thing is, like, I think I've just come to realize, like, it's yeah, catching limit's great, and the fish tastes good, and I'm not opposed to keeping fish. I'll let that be known. Like, I'll keep a redfish here and there. I love ceviche. I'll keep trout, whatever. But I also enjoy. And the other thing is, like, it's kind of interesting because catch and release is like uniquely a first world
Oh yeah. Oh,
privilege, if you will.
absolutely. Yeah. Huh? Yeah.
We have the opportunities to be able to go and fish and release them. And as long as you handle the fish properly, like their survival rates are actually really, really high. And of course, that's varied from species to species. Generally, so long as you handle the fish properly, like they have a very, very good chance of surviving. And um, so yeah, man, I mean, I would argue that like the people who want to go out there and catch the limits, like it's also, I think, because a lot of people are willing to catch and release, like
Yeah.
they are able
Yeah.
to do these things. Because I mean, if everybody was catching every fish they caught, these populations would certainly start to
And
feel.
not only that, but I
And
think sometimes just because you catch a fish and you release it, the survival rate can be good, but it's like in cold weather. Um, and I don't think a lot of people realize this, but you know, freshwater trout anglers are very anal retentive, right? I don't want you to touch that trout unless it's kind of like behind their fins, right? Because they got that protective slime. Well, I kind of think that same way about handling speckled trout in saltwater. They don't have scales. They've got
oh yeah,
kind of this slime. And I see people just like grabbing them in the middle and taking them out. And like, I don't imagine that does very well, especially in cold winter months. I mean, so they're kind of a it's not the right word, weaker, but they're not as hardy as say a redfish. They're
yeah,
pretty. I would think of them kind of
yeah,
sensitive in a way as like snook, that they just don't tolerate cold. They can do it
yeah,
obviously better than a snook can, but like just the fact that you hook them, and if they're not eating that many calories, you might say, oh well, I released them, but they might die. you know
yeah.
and
No,
it's just like
and
just because
I,
like you catch a limit and you release them doesn't mean that those fish even that you released are going to survive, and there's got to be some kind of like
exactly.
some compensation. But I don't know, I'm not going to sit here and say that nobody
Yeah,
thinks about it, but that again, just being us
yeah,
being fly fishers and tooting our own horns, that like there's some we're taught that it's like part of the game.
yeah,
Is like you going out and being like,
yeah,
and you know this, like you catch bobos, and it's like you're gonna keep a few, okay, but like it's just funny because if you were gonna keep any other trout species, it's like that's beyond the pale, right? Or handling
yeah,
them wrong. So it's just kind of like a different thing. So it's also hard for me. It's someone that was conventional, but someone that really just likes fly fishing so much better to kind of like go from that perspective and then just think about somebody being like a bow fisher, and I'm just gonna we're gonna go out there, boys, and we're gonna work the fish. You know what? It's gonna be like it's gonna be a turkey shoot, which is a phrase I never understood because like I never hear about people just mowing down turkeys because they got great eyesight. So it's not like you're just shooting like 10 turkeys in like an open field. I mean, maybe they did back in, the days of yore, um but I guess it's hard for me, like thinking about, conservation and being a fly fisher and supposedly being held to a higher standard or whatever it is, to being like, okay, let me go out with some dudes and we're gonna go work these buffalo, just gonna murder them. What are we gonna do with them? They'll be gator bait. We'll throw them to the gators because then we're gonna go, shoot the gators later. You know, and again, like even with invasive species, like I'm gonna be honest. My oldest son and I, we went down to the Everglades. We fished with a guy down there, and he was totally cool. Like, hey, listen, like you guys, I like it. I like that you're going to keep the fish, you're going to take them home, and you're going to cook them. And he's like, well, we could also use a few for gator bait. So like I could understand that if you're going to like bait up a big gator or something and go out there and shoot it or whatever you're going to do with an arrow, rifle, I don't know. But you're going to use it for something else, like an invasive species or something like that. My point just being, I guess there's an easier way to do it than using a bow. But I understand the sporting element of, hey, I'm going to use a bow because it's harder to hit a bow. But like, if you're doing it just to get them out, like, I don't know, throw a stick of dynamite in there and just like, shoot them out of the water, like what the old timers used to say, like, oh, fish aren't biting, throw dynamite in there. We'll catch them that way.
Yeah, and see the management of like the actual management of invasive. Like, okay, first of all, I'm not a fish biologist. I'm not anywhere close to that. This is just personal opinion. I just don't see a cost-effective way of being able to manage fish. Like they can go anywhere in that river they want to. And then if you do throw dynamite, you're gonna probably kill some stuff you don't want to. And you can go there with the and like shock them, whatever. But that's a lot of time and a lot of energy, a lot of money and gas for the boat, for the vehicle. I mean, everything. It's just, and then I guess you can catch some and like maybe sterilize them or whatever. But that's also very intensive, and you probably won't see the effects until generations later. And so I will say this about bow fishing, I guess from a sporting perspective, like it is attractive in that it will allure hunters, who maybe want to sharpen their skills for the season or whatever, or just try something different. But that can generate some revenue with the purchases of licenses and permits that will go into conservation. So I can see some potential benefits with bow fishing for invasive species. When it comes to the actual management side of it, I just don't know how effective it is.
Right.
Oh yeah, they're in there. They're in there. I mean, you could go. It's like we were talking about this, like because I remember when I forget it was the Ohio River system or something. They were going to the governor was going to allow like these Chinese fishing trawlers to go in there, which are going to dredge the bottom, and they're going to catch everything in there. And I was just kind of like joking, like, well, man, why don't they just like shut off this part of the river and like just literally dredge it? And he's like, they could, but there's all these other creeks and these pipes, and then it just goes all up into Miami. And so like, good luck. And they're like, oh yeah, okay, well, and and we could talk the same thing about, I think, invasive weeds, invasive plants. It's like once they're out in the, once they're out in the system, it's kind of like, you can manage it in certain areas, but it's like, do we learn to live with them?
Yeah.
Or do we just want to keep like poisoning the land and soil with the pesticides and the dream that like it's going to work? I don't know.
I think there has to be a happy medium somewhere, though.
Maybe.
I mean, of course, it's going to be harder to manage. That's a given. It's going to be harder to manage. But if there's some type of regulation or some type of bag limit, obviously, like Jose was saying, size limit is going to be hard to manage. But bag limit and stuff like that, and saying that maybe certain fish shouldn't be able to be bow hunted. Or make seasons for them, stuff like that. Because if it's spawning season for the red horse sucker, for instance, you see them in hordes. You see thousands of them because they're spawning.
Yep.
And then they go and eradicate them. So not only is that just affecting the population there at that given time, but then if they're not successfully reproducing, then the following generations are then going to be affected. And so maybe it could be something like, hey, well, during the spawning season for said species, you can't bow fish them. I think there's definitely going to be a happy medium on ways that we can not necessarily manage, but just kind of set regulations to say, hey, maybe this will help the population better. And talking on the part of harvesting and stuff like that, I agree. If it's an invasive species and you're going to harvest it and you're going to use it for something, you're going to use it for compost, you're going to eat it, you're going to use it for bait. As long as you're doing something with it, me personally, I'm a lot more lenient. Like, okay, yeah, you're going to do it. You're going to sport. You're going to do your thing. Of course, just like Jose, I can't tell you how you can go have fun, go, recreate or anything like that. Just go do it. But do it responsibly. Do it with morals. If you have this moral compass of I'm just going to go and eradicate and murder everything I see, that's not doing anything for anybody. There's no positives to come from it. But if you're going to go out there and say, hey, I need, I'm going to get some of this, maybe feed my kids, teach my kids the outdoors, teach them how to survive, for when and if this world goes to crap, and they'll be able to, use their means to do so. Like, I get that, and I respect that 100% wholeheartedly. I want my kids to be able to survive if and when this world goes to crap. But at the same time, there's a way to responsibly do it. And I just think there should be a happy medium that, getting the word out there and maybe not necessarily managing the amount of species or anything like that, but just getting the word out there could be a way to, in turn, manage it, quote unquote, manage it.
Yeah. Dude, and it's so hard because, like, just hearing the three of us talk, someone who bowfishes might hear this podcast, like, feel, I don't know, chastised or something like that. And I think that's probably one of the reasons why it might be hard to be receptive to that and want to kind of look at it from a different scope, because they feel like, they're, I guess, the outcast, if you will. But it's kind of like politics, man. It's conversation is one thing, right? But once that turns into like an argument, you're wrong, you're wrong, you're wrong, whatever, you need to do it this way or think this way, then that's when there's some resistance. So there needs to be like some dialogue and just like general hey, like you, like, you do you, man, like whatever. But I think maybe we can try and fix this, because the fact of the matter is, like, the outdoors, like people who choose to hunt and fish and recreate in that way, they're already like having to deal with people like from like, I don't want to name any organizations, but there's already resistance, right? Like, we're already targeted, like they're already trying, there's people out there already trying to reduce people from, or trying to keep people from hunting certain species or whatever, or fish for certain species. Well, not so much. I don't, for some reason, I guess fish don't get the same love as mammals do, But,
Ducks.
I've seen quite a bit.
Huh?
I've seen quite a bit of people on, and it's like they'll join fishing groups to specifically go in there and chastise fishermen and say, well, oh, that
Yeah.
poor fish.
Swordfish.
Or you'll see it where
tuna or something. Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah. Like offshore fish, big fish like that, sure. But like redfish or whatever, maybe not as much love. But again, it's just like, we as outdoorsmen, we are, since we're already facing so much like ridicule at times, like, we really shouldn't be fighting each other anymore either. I think there are ways to have good, productive conversation and are able, I think there's possibilities of reaching a good middle ground. Like, hey man, you could still do what you're doing. There just might be better ways.
I think
to do
one
it
thing,
and stuff like
one
that.
thing that if you talk to a few Louisiana guides about, part of the reason they also don't like it is because what happens is a lot of bow fishing takes place at night. You got your lights, you can shine the fish, blind them, and it makes it easier. Okay, so you have people in an area like wherever it is, Louisiana, Florida, Texas, lots of fishing pressure, in the day. And then at night, you got the dudes going out in the party boat, having a grand old time shooting them, and the fish don't really get a chance to rest. What does that mean for the population?
Yeah.
I don't know. They're more wary. Maybe they don't reproduce because they're constantly being chased. And I think, like, but then again, it's always going to be that, well, I don't do it that often. I only do it like once a month. I do it like twice a year, so it's not that big of a deal. And there's always this, well, I do it this way, and I'm the what is it? I'm the exception to the rule. I'm not the guy going out there. But I think it's also just hard conversations that actually need to be had between locals, right? Like if I'm fly fishing, I'm a guide in an area where dudes are bow fishing or bow hunting, whatever you want to call it, and slaughtering species. I'm going to talk to them and say, well, pretty soon we're not going to really have a great living doing this because I'm fishing at day, you're going at night, and you're shooting more fish than I am bringing in to harvest. And you may think you're doing a good and it's okay because it's legal and it's on paper, but that person's going to get defensive because it's already going to be, oh,
Yeah.
you fancy boy, you fly fisher, you surgeon's son, this, that, and the other, fancy boy, look at you, big money talking, and like it's already going to be like accusatory and defensive, but it's like a hard conversation that should be had. But again, will it get anywhere? I don't know, but it some way, I feel like a lot of solutions are always going to kind of be local. And at a certain point, I think
Yeah.
things just become so obvious to even somebody that's I mean, there's some people that are just going to be resistant to whatever. But if you're shooting, you go out 4 times a week and you do this for 4 months and you shoot thousands of redfish, you're probably going to eventually see a population decline. But there's always going to be that, oh, well, they're hardy and they're going to reproduce. It's fine. Like you hear a lot of people say, oh, well, they have a lot of bounce back. But it's like, at what point? It's like in Florida, we're releasing redfish into
Yeah.
the wild. And we don't have people just
Yeah.
murdering
And that doesn't even,
murdering them with, bows.
yeah,
So,
and see, that doesn't even include like
no,
environmental impacts. Like when we like here in Texas, when we had those really hard breezes, dude. I mean, the coast was
yep,
lined with thousands upon
yep,
thousands
fish
of dead
kills.
fish. So if you take that into
Yep,
consideration, yeah, man, you're going out there and you're, like you said, going so many times a week for however many months, and you're just putting the hurting on these
yeah,
fish, dude. It's eventually somewhere it's going to add
yeah.
up.
Yeah.
And again, like I'm not saying we need to outright like ban it or anything like that, but again, I just think that there are better ways to kind of approach this where everybody can benefit.
I'll say if you want a challenge, instead of just gunning the fish down, you could try a fly rod. Maybe go to a local business instead of a big box store, right? Instead of going to like Bass Pro to
Right.
get your rig, go to a local fly shop, support them, try and learn something new that's not
Yeah.
going to leave holes in the fish. And I guarantee you, trying to catch a buffalo and a carp is going to be as challenging as like trying to gun the fish down in broad daylight with a bow and arrow.
Challenging and much more rewarding.
Yeah, yeah, exactly. And you're not just like, oh, I'll throw it on the gators will eat them. But what happens if there's no gators? Are the foxes? There going to be that many coyotes and foxes feasting on? And do they need to eat that much carp in their diet?
Right.
I don't know. It's it.
Hey, a lot of omegas.
Yes,
They're going to be some.
That's right.
Some shiny foxes with some great fur running around.
And then that'll be like, whoa, we got.
Hey man, tie some flies with that.
But then
stuff,
it's
too.
also, wow, look at all these coyotes around here. God, we got to shoot them too. So it's just it's kind of like this. I don't know. It's. I would just say for me, I respect you guys. You're thoughtful, but like I say, hey, if you want something challenging, you can put down the bow. Actually, do this. Go stalk the deer with your bow and arrow. Get out on the stand and go stalk them the old-fashioned way. And then,
Right.
that's
right.
pretty challenging. Hitting a fish that's blinded by the light, I mean, kind of challenging, but like try it with a fly and getting it right in there, and you get to see it. You take it and you set the hook, and there it is. You'll want to kill it because it's whatever. You're probably not going to you're probably not going to catch 25 carp like you would, or 50 red horse like you would just go out there guns blazing, or both reels or rods
Dude,
blazing.
I haven't even caught a carp.
Yeah, I haven't either. They hate my guts, so it's fine. But you,
Dude, Russell's Russell, the one he caught was a
Yeah.
freaking pig, man.
A little fatty.
But see, that's
Jose's
Dude, that one probably took him-
hooked quite a few of them
Oh, yeah.
though, and he's had some long fights and
Dude, I've
unable
only
to land
hooked
it.
2.
that's two more
I
than
thought you
I've
hooked
hooked.
another one over on the lower Colorado. Did you hook another one that one day?
No, I hooked one on the Colorado.
And then that other one
I
that
hooked that one, and I hooked one here in College Station.
that you fought.
And yeah, so I've only hooked
I
2,
see.
and it was with the wrong, like the absolute wrong tackle. It was just kind of accident. But yeah, I mean, like I've been obsessed with carp, and okay, and this kind of going on to the fly fishing thing. Like, man, I will say this: I come from a conventional
I did
background,
too.
and to like it to and I okay, so Russell knows this deal. I don't think you and I have had the pleasure of talking. Well, actually, this is the first time we had to talk. But yeah, man. So I picked up fly fishing as a means to just add another tool in my toolbox. Like I want it to be, I want to be a just a like a good outdoorsman. Not, it wasn't really my goal to be a good fly fisherman, if that makes any sense. So it just so happened that I really, really like fly fishing now, and that's all I want to do. And ever since I picked up that rod, I feel like my approach to how I see things is different. I feel like I'm a more ethical angler, and I also appreciate the chase. I also appreciate the different fish. Like a lot of people regard, especially in the conventional community, regard carp as a trash fish. They don't want to catch them. But dude, that is like,
Yeah.
I am obsessed. Like I want one so bad. And I've been trying to catch, like I've been tying flies for them. Like I have been doing research on them. Like, and I think fly fishing just opened up a lot of doors. And I think that's one of the cool things about fly fishing because I feel like a lot of fly anglers are like the
Some
same way.
are. Some are purists. Some
which
just
is
want to catch their brown trout,
Yeah.
and that's
Some
that's
are.
fine. If you just want to,
Which isn't even a
Nope.
native species
Nope.
here either.
It's not.
by the way.
It's not.
Just
Oh, it's
throwing
not.
that
It is
out
fun
there.
And they know
catch
that. They know that. They're super
Yeah.
protective.
Actually, that guy, a huge fly fisherman, had
Yeah,
an
they're
excellent video
they're trash.
on Nate.
But it's
Yeah.
also I like to make fun of those guys because they're super protective of that invasive species. But like when they come down to Florida, they're like, we'll keep a red, and it's like, where's the love for our native species,
Right.
right? Just because they have table fare, you can release them, man. It's not going to hurt. You can go buy some. You want some redfish? Go buy
Yeah.
them in the store, man. Get some of that farm raised Louisiana redfish.
Right. So Jose, you're so obsessed with catching carp, and aren't you friends with Chris Fowler? Or you know Chris Fowler? Chris Fowler?
Who? Chris Fowler? Man, he's a good. I don't know if I call him a friend just because like I don't have his number. I don't talk to him, but I've met him a couple times. Really cool dude. But he is a carpy guy, man. He used to live or fish a lot around the Austin area, and that dude has caught some freaking tanks. He's also caught koi fish. Dude, he's the carp like whisperer, man. He now owns a fly shop called the Fly Trap. Shout out Chris in Rockport, Texas. Sweet shop, cool dude. If y'all are ever making a trip to Rockport or Rentis Pass, whatever, swing by, say what's up. It'll be worth the trip for sure. But yeah, man, that guy, dude,
Well, I'm sure he
catch
can give
carp.
you some
It's
tips,
great.
man. You need to get on some.
Dude, I just haven't had the chance
Right.
to pick his brain about it, man.
Sounds like you need to jump on it. I'm gonna go up to the suburban Atlanta area to fish with Henry Cowan, and yeah, he's striper man, the sodium free striper guy. Yeah, but he goes for carp. We have the conversation like, man, in some ways he'd rather fish for carp too, and I'm like, oh yeah, set me up, like. I like other kinds of fishing for sure, like bass fishing. It's cool, but like something. It's always been something about the carp too. Like I think they're not. It's not like fishing for a permit, and I'm not. I'm just going to be on record. Like if I catch a permit, awesome. But am I going to go spend like weeks in Mexico chasing the damn things around? No, no. Like permit guys, a special. I don't like finicky fish. I just, you know, I don't. I leave that to the people with like a lot of disposable income, and that like they've got it where they can go jet set around, and more power to them, or they live around them. But I just, so it's like the carp for me. is kind of like, I hold it not in the same standards as like a
And
permit, but it's like one of those fish. A permit,
yeah,
Arab.
it's an
Mhm.
accessible
Yes,
finicky fish.
exactly. Yeah, yeah, pretty much. And it's one that's just far enough away to me that it's like, oh, it's exotic. I've got grass carp in this
Yeah.
local lake, but they're like, I swear, there's one or two of them, and they literally just flap up on the top of the water. They're just rolling around on the top, not a care in the world. But then they're usually down the bottom, like 20 feet down, and then they just like come up and they're like, nah. So, I mean, you could sit there and rack your
Yeah.
brain, but like, basically, I'd have to go travel, and I'm so desperate. There's like this, a carp pond in suburban Atlanta, and it's like they have just these like
Hmm.
ridiculous size carp, but it's mostly like it's only open for a few days, and they got a lot of tournaments, and it'd be funny. I mean, you got all these guys with like the six rods out there and their corn and their own home paste and stuff, and then you got Mr. Dandy that rolls out there with his fly rod that's like, oh, okay, and they're all like looking at me like I'm the exotic species out there, and somehow by like walking around them, I'm ruining their game, you know, and it's I don't know,
Me
but
and
I'm
Jose have
I'm
been that all duck before on the
Yeah.
San Marcos River
oh
and stuff. Oh,
sure,
we get so many
Oh
looks
yeah.
like, what are those guys doing?
Oh yeah.
oh yeah,
Yeah. Like what the hell kind of fishing
yeah.
is that? Why are you waving that
Yeah,
paramour
or it's
around?
like you probably have heard this before. You can catch those fish on fly.
Oh, all
Like
the
it's
time.
yeah, yeah. It's
Oh
like
dude.
yeah, it's not just
Yeah.
trout because like I'll say this: when I first started fly fishing, I just assumed it was like about trout,
Yeah.
and,
Same.
and like
Same. Same.
trout fishing's fine. Okay, like it's cool. I'm not like I don't think I'm the guy that's going to be chasing around like fish this big with a $3,000
Hey,
bamboo rod
hey,
up in mountains.
I feel attacked, man.
But no, no, no,
I
no.
love those
You're
fish.
you're not purposely you're not purposely trying to catch them. But like my point just being is that I my grandfather always wanted me to learn how to fly fish, but he was thinking more in terms of like sunfish and that kind of thing. Um, but yeah, like it'll be whether it's freshwater. And when I lived in Arkansas, man, you catch bass on that thing, like yeah, dude. What do you think? Bass like can intuitively tell like that's a fly. I'm not eating that.
Right.
They're voracious. If they're hungry, they will eat lots of
Oh yeah.
things, or even in salt, like redfish. I'm like, yeah, you never seen those guys in those expensive boats that sit out there on that shoal, and they're $100,000 boats. You think they're fishing with mullet? Like, no, man, they all got convention. They all got fly rods, $1,000
Yep.
fly rods, mind you, out there.
Right.
And so it's just, and that kind of gets back to like what we've been saying about like having a conversation about like bow fishing, fly fishing, all these things kind of coexisting within this thing called the great outdoors. And like I said to start, I'm not opposed with it. But if you want a challenge, you don't have to shoot and kill the fish and go fly fishing. Give it a try. It'll probably piss you off. It'll probably just you'll get upset because you can't make a cast like anywhere like you can with a conventional rod. But I promise you, when you see the fish eat, it'll be very rewarding if you do get them to eat. That's a big if. And you know what? You don't leave holes in the fish, and you don't just grievously wound it,
Yeah.
or you just don't have it bounce off their
Yeah.
their armor because you didn't use the dense arrow or the right your bit, or not your bit, but your blade, whatever you want to call it, arrowhead. That's what it is. It's too dull,
Broadhead.
you know.
Yeah.
So yeah,
Yeah.
take up fly fishing, but don't actually become a fly fisher. Okay, don't come
Try it.
and don't
Just try it. One
just
and
try it
done.
a few times. It's fine, but just stay. You know what? Florida sucks. You don't want to come fly fishing in Florida. You don't want to come in my area. Go down to the Keys. So overrated. It's just it's no fun. Frustrating. You got to deal with wind and those fish. I mean, sure they pull hard, but that wind. Oh, that wind, and Wading and casting, it's not for everybody.
It sounds so horrible that me and Jose need
It
to make a trip
sucks.
down
It does.
there.
Like,
Dude, I don't care. I don't care how bad it is. I want to go so bad.
no, you guys are okay. You guys are fine. You guys are okay. But the other
Also,
people, like, no.
real quick, kind of.
Yeah, go ahead.
Oh, sorry. Just real quick, piggyback off what you said. If there are any fly fishermen who kind of turn their nose up at carp fishing, it's also good practice for when you do want to go to the
Mhm.
salt, like sight casting, presentation, your sight cast or your wading abilities, all that stuff. Man, do a little bit of carp fishing. You'll be good for some reds, some black drum, maybe even some
Yeah,
bonefish or
you
something.
got to get it within a pretty small plane. You can't. Well, see, now Louisiana is different because, like, you could throw a 50-pound leader at those fish and almost hit it on the head. It won't matter because they're not leader shy. But like carp are probably leader shy, and so they
Yeah.
get pressure,
Oh,
and
yeah.
so like getting it to unfold naturally, to put it there, to drag it in front of their face. But again, with carp, don't strip set it. That's what I imagine. Don't strip set it. But like, hey, I will say this: if you are gonna, you're a bow fisherman and you're gonna take up fly fishing, always trout set and salt water. Always trout set. It's the
Solid.
best advice I can ever give. And just
And
think
fall
of it
off
as
the
like,
boat.
Gotta
yeah,
almost pay for that one.
Trout set and fall off the boat. That's the way you're going to catch them.
that's right.
Oh, good times.
Well, boys, that's gonna do it for me.
All righty. Well, thank you for coming on the podcast. It was good. I think there's a lot of good information to share
Hold on.
here.
Just
Sure.
1 second, guys, real quick. If you don't mind, Russ, I'm gonna plug my buddy Rob. So, not sure when this episode is gonna air, but as of February 7th, 2023, his book Fly Fishing Houston and Southeastern Texas was officially released, and it's a 300-page book about fishing in and around Houston. It gives you some good locations for parking. Gives you general locations for potential fishing spots and what to expect. No spot burning. You got to go. He gives you enough to get started. It's up to you to actually do the rest. I mean, he even talks about like local breweries and stuff
Ooh.
like that. Solid book. And also, your boy may or may not make an appearance in it too. So just go and check it out, guys. It should be on Amazon. Yeah, man, cop yourself a copy. Super, super cool book. Super great dude. He also wrote another book called Fly Fishing the Sam, all about fly fishing the Sam Houston National Forest. Kind of like blue lining in Texas, if you will. Super like small creeks, like in the national forest. Freaking awesome fishery, man. Totally underrated. But yeah, check it out.
Definitely will. Definitely will. Whenever we post this, we can probably put a link in there as well.
Yeah, do it. Do it
For
wherever it is. And I don't really have any pluggables, But if you think I'm such an asshole and I'm so caustic and that thing, and you want to send me hate mail on Instagram, I guess Russ can put up my my IG, and it's
I
fine.
definitely will.
I can have a conversation. It's okay. I don't take myself seriously, by the way, people. But if I really grind your gears, oh well. I'll just keep triggering you. Yes.
Ooh, dude. That would be a good segment for
What?
this podcast. What grinds
Yes.
my gears?
That
There
would
you
be.
go.
That would be.
What?
Okay.
Dude,
Okay.
I like it.
What grinds my gears
Well,
is
thanks for
well. Here's my quip. Then what grinds my gears? Bow fishing. Don't do it. Go and buy a fly rod, but don't go to Florida. Don't fly fish down there. But if you do, trout set. It's important. You'll do well. I appreciate it. It'll take you far in this world.
I don't think we could have ended.
Any better.
I don't think we could have ended this episode any better than that, man.
Right.
Okay.
Well, thank you again for joining, Brian. And
man.
I guess that'll do it for this episode. And
Sure.
Like we said last time, please like, share, follow, do everything that you can. And if you guys have any questions, if there's anything else you want us to talk about, have any topics you want us to cover, feel free to let us know. Reach out to me or Jose. And if you want to send all the hate mail, even if it's about me and Jose, just make sure you send it to Brian. I'll put his IG in the bottom of the video in the description. So other than that, I guess that'll do it for this episode. Thank y'all for joining.